here. Alex, this is Alex Gribard.
Hello.
I got to be honest with you. I don't know what
Yeah.
this is.
Yeah, you haven't done one yet. This is the
No,
first.
this is what I'm trying to do is I don't know if I explained it to you. There's, believe it or not, there's a lot of things I don't understand in this great world of ours, and
Sure.
I'm trying to get to the bottom of them. So I find out something that I don't get, and I think of who I know that knows the most about that thing, and then I hope that they teach me about all that stuff. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Sure.
So, yeah. Today, so what this we did a podcast, the previous Night Moves podcast.
Yeah.
In times in the prior times,
Before times.
the before times, we did and I remember it getting. I'm not gonna say hostile when I brought up my lack of not. I thought I knew a lot about cities and populations, and you're apparently the go-to resource on this.
The local expert on misinformation about cities and towns.
Well, like,
just,
what is
you know.
so? What are you interested in that same shit? Like,
Yeah, I totally dive into that. Like, I go on a lot of Wikipedia pages for different cities and stuff. I mean, you know how it
Yeah.
is. You're a comedian. You go
Yeah.
to these towns, and I'm always like, even on a level of, well, can I tell this joke, or maybe can I think of a thing locally
Right.
about their town? A lot of that stuff, just understanding demographics and why people live there. Why
that's
people
the
live
thing.
there.
That's kind of what I'm. That's kind of what I can't figure out. Like, because we like go on the road and we do like, and it's not like I mean I'll just speak for myself. I'm not in like Miami or St. Louis or Chicago. I'm like in like Devil's Fork, Virginia, population 2,200,
Yeah.
and I'm like and like driving to shows. I'm always. Have you ever driven through a town or like stopped in town, and you're like, how is this a town? Like
Well,
what?
You know.
How the fuck is it a place? Like
A lot of
who's
times
here?
It's like, well, you know, if you keep going that way, you're in hell. If you go that way,
Yeah.
this is why they call it Devil's Fork, and you put the town there.
yeah,
It's like,
the
well,
Devil's
there's not
Fork.
a lot of paths.
Right,
You
right.
can't keep going into
Devil's
the
Fork
mountains.
is like, that's probably why towns exist, is because hell's there, and hell's also back there. Let's make a town here that's not hell.
Yeah. Before you get, we have to go into the mines for work. So, but let's not live inside the mine. Let's live at Devil's Fork, like right before you get into the hell.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like that's kind of what you know, I always think about, because like Bethlehem is where I'm from. It's a relatively small town, and at one time it was the biggest manufacturer of steel, right?
Right.
And now it is not. So, but everybody stayed.
Yeah. well,
Like
how are
the
you gonna leave?
the big corporation went defunct, and everybody was like, "This is my town." So like what blows my mind is like because I do the same thing. I'll like when I'm on the road, I'll drive by a town and I'll be like, "That's a weird name of a place." Let me look it up, and I'll look it up, and it was like population in 2010 was 30,000. Population now is 1,900, and I'm like,
Yeah.
how is anybody here? What are they like? Why are people here? There's no business. There's no anything. It blows my mind, and I can't figure it out. I can't figure out how we like why certain towns popped up in America. Like I get it why like New York City makes sense. It's like, all right, it's like there's bodies of water that all feed here. We're right on the coast. It makes I can make that make sense. But like there are places that I'm like, well, how is like Cleveland? How the why did
water.
Cleveland become a big city? And
So it's
you know,
right on the lake.
yeah,
So it's the same water thing. Everywhere's the water thing.
it's all
The
water.
thing is big for old towns, old cities. They just want to be by water. You know, you
Yeah.
have a source of water at the very least, let alone a way to connect. Because a lot of these cities. It's like,
tributary, as they say, right?
yeah, and they didn't even have like access to the rail, let alone cars. They had boat access and like wagon access. So that's how you get everything in there. I mean, that's just one resource. There are other resources that might help build the city. Rock and roll,
Yeah.
for instance. But like Cleveland, Cleveland is kind of that's where the Hall of Fame is, I guess. But yeah, I think these places. There's another aspect. So there's so many variables, but that's a big variable is water. If you have a river,
Yeah.
if you have a lake, if you have the ocean, a river is probably the most vital thing. And
The
I guess
river- the
ocean,
river-
because your ocean makes it international, but the river is actual source of like transportation and drinking water and everything like that, as opposed to the
Yeah.
ocean.
So I'm listening. I'm just sending this link to the other guest who's extremely unprofessional,
yeah.
if you ask me.
But
yeah,
yeah,
the
water.
the river to me, this is going to be maybe the dumbest thing you hear. Rivers, it blows my mind how rivers never run out of water.
Sure.
They never run out. Whereas,
Yeah.
like, that's crazy. It's all moving, and it never runs out.
You got to worry about the other side of it. If polar ice caps melt. Guess
Yeah,
what? Those
exactly.
rivers are going to be overflowing. There'll be a lot more rivers.
When they start to, when the rapids start to go nuts, you're like, we don't got
Yeah.
much time left.
Well, let's build a town real fast.
So, yeah,
with all this
I'm
water.
the population. Like I'm just like, because when I was a kid, I would like. I think I said this in that Night Moves episode. I would read the Farmer's Almanac for Kids. That's what it was called,
Loved it.
and I would just get fixated on populations, like mid-level cities, like a Buffalo or like
Oh,
a
yeah.
Cleveland. Like it just blew. Like everybody talks about the big ones. But I think it's so cool that these it fascinated me that there's cities with like 200,000 people.
That's a big city too, and
It's a big city, but like it gets to a certain point, and it caps. You know?
Yeah, well, eventually it moves into the suburbs. Cities spread out. Most cities aren't like New York City, where they decided to be like, all of this is the city. Philadelphia
Right.
was the same way. They were like, all of this.
Yeah.
Everything here, instead of being like, well, these are the limits, and then it's a different town. I mean, you go to like, I don't know, anywhere, and there's just suburbs. Even if the city's really big and sprawling,
Yeah.
just kind of go suburbs. New York the East Coast is way different because it's a town every
Yeah.
second. They put towns literally everywhere, and they're all kind of like pretty full. But New York also used to be just Manhattan, and then
Right.
they annexed all the boroughs. But like Brooklyn was a big city. Brooklyn was like the fifth biggest city in the country, third biggest city, something like that, before it became a part of New York City.
Oh shit! I didn't realize that.
I mean, that's another way like populations grow. They'll annex the town next door. They'll just go, this is actually now part of this. I'm coming to you from Jersey City, and the Heights, the Jersey City Heights,
Yeah. Mhm.
that used to be Hudson City.
Okay.
And at one point, Jersey City annexed it, and it became part of Jersey City.
Yeah. All right.
Obviously,
And
the
that's
population
probably
grows.
how. Yeah, that could explain how cities grow in population quicker than you think. They just kind of
Right.
like conquer a new
And
new
something
land.
the reverse is the same, where like Bethlehem Steel, dissolves, and the whole town decides to move wherever, if they don't because they can't and they're stuck.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was another steel factory down the road that still was like hiring tens of thousands of people might have moved out of Bethlehem. If
Yeah.
you're worked at Bethlehem Steel and it closes and there's nowhere to go, why leave Bethlehem? It. I mean, there's a familiarity there. Hello.
Oh, there he is.
Yo, can you hear me?
I mean, Jesus, like 30 minutes late here. It's like
Yeah.
we've already figured out all of the issues.
We nailed it.
No.
Perfect. Showing up to work.
Do you know Alex? You know Alex, Randy?
I don't think we know each
I
other.
think we met. I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
so.
Maybe.
Let me fix one.
There it is.
Hell yeah.
We were just kind of figuring out, like, because Randy, you know how I'm always like talking about like how I don't understand how places exist. I don't. It doesn't make sense to me. Like New York City, at one time New York City didn't have that many people in it,
Yeah.
right? It just didn't wake up as a big ass city.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just saying
Well,
they
no.
annexed all the boroughs.
Yeah, they just did. Yeah, but at one time even Manhattan wasn't that big.
No, but like nowhere was. Philly was the
Well,
biggest city for a long time
Yeah,
in the
I
U.S.
think how hard it was to get places though at that point. You know,
that's true.
It wasn't
Yeah.
just. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm gonna. You're not gonna be there in an hour. That's a 2-day trip.
At least.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
That's it. Just blows my mind. Like even the fact that we went west
Oh yeah.
blows my. Like I couldn't. I don't have the type of personality that would have gone anywhere else. Like if, first of all, I wouldn't have been on the Mayflower. I would have been like, it wouldn't have mattered what my current country like what my life was like in where I was living. If it could be as bad as it gets, if people are like, hey, we're all getting on a boat and going somewhere else, I'd be like, I'm staying. I'm very scared of that. And
You're
I
like,
just
I'm gonna worship whatever God
Yeah,
New
I don't
England
care.
tells me to.
tell me what else you need me to worship. I'll do that.
Yeah.
That the thought of exploring is so foreign to me, and then even and then we get to the United States, we hit land, and then there were still some people that are like, let's keep going. It
Manifest
just blows my
destiny.
mind. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
gotta be
Alex-
crazy. Gotta be crazy. That's
You gotta
genetic,
be-
right?
You got to be desperate. I think,
Well, that's the other thing.
going
Like
on.
genetically, I guess our
It's
first,
genetic.
the people that first came here were more genetically risk takers, right? Like we all had, like the first settlers all were like, in some way, shape, or form, risk takers.
Hmm.
So,
I think
it
that's
took like
segment of the-
basically my family. It took the Rothrock genes a long time to get over here, and that's why we've only made it to Bethlehem in the United States.
I think that segment of the population still exists.
What
The
risk
Rothrocks?
takers?
Yeah.
The Rothrocks.
They're still there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of people that move all over the country.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess that's true.
But not even okay, so let's think about like you got to update the risk though, right? Because at that point the risk was physically moving. That was challenging. You're going to have to fight somebody along the way. You're probably going to catch some like people are going to die. You go, hey,
Yeah.
there's 10 of us going to California. Look around. Pick, I don't know, 3-4 of your friends and they ain't going to be there when you get there.
Yeah, and I would assume that one of them would be me. That's how I would work. I'm like, yeah, I'm certainly one of the ones that won't make it.
Yeah, I've played Oregon Trail already, even though it's
Yeah.
1740.
Oregon
Have you guys-
Trail has
Yeah.
a lot to do with how towns get made too, I bet, right? Like people were like, let's go west, seek gold, and then they're like, let's quit and live here.
That still happens in a way. I mean, of course, that's definitely part of it. But even like they build a new interstate and towns will pop up, for
Yeah.
various reasons. Like a lot of the Midwest and the Southwest popped up because of Route 66. And that was like there was really no way to drive from Chicago to California. And then all of a sudden people want to do this drive just because it's accessible, and entire towns popped up just to sell stuff
Right.
to people doing this road trip. Road trips didn't exist until like,
Uh-huh. Oh yeah.
the late
There's
40s,
so many
50s.
times like I'll be on a highway and like there'll be like a cloverleaf like exchange or like exit situation, and it's like a town of, it seems like it's a town built for one person getting off the exit.
Yeah.
There's like a Quality Inn, there's a Pizza Hut, there's a place to get Band-Aids. It's like this is just for a very specific type of traveler, kind of on the run or somebody murdering. There are like a lot of these like rest stop little towns. There doesn't seem to be any homes, but all the infrastructure is there to support what I would believe is somebody that's murdered and running from the law.
You gotta remember too, like you go far enough back, like the reason a town will pop up in a spot like that, it might just be like this is the only clean water for the next 15 miles. So
Yeah.
if you don't want
That's
the
what we were
runs,
saying.
like hey
Yeah, yeah.
guys, if you don't want the runs, like we're gonna just hang out here. Like centrally, we're gonna just be here. And you guys
But
might have covered this already. I don't know.
But
No,
yeah,
no.
but it's true. But then how does like because we were talking about that water's the most important thing. But then at some point they're like Vegas, screw it, water. Who gives a shit? We want to
Drink alcohol.
gamble. You know,
Yeah.
we're on the run from New York. We're mobsters that want to fucking show up in Nevada and
Yeah.
take advantage of this. I mean, even things like that. Gambling gets legalized in Nevada, and so of course you build a city in Nevada. You know, right now, like North Dakota is kind of like booming, and it's because they have all these. I think oil rigs out there. There's just like a ton of work to be found if you want to be in the oil industry out in North Dakota. North Dakota, not a big population, so people move in. They need more infrastructure. All of a sudden, they've got a 10,000 person town, and in North Dakota, that's like a big town.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's usually what going to be like money. Money will get you people there, and if you don't get women to come there, nobody's staying there.
Yeah.
You can't regrow the population. You can't have any turnover.
You can't regrow the population. You get a bunch of dudes isolated, just dudes. Again, people are gonna die. You can't
There's
have
no-
4 or 5 dudes.
I don't think
Why
there
not?
is an all dude. There's not an all dude town anywhere in the nation,
You'd be
and I think
surprised.
we should give that a run just to see.
Never.
You never
or
been
an
to
all-
San Diego.
No. Tyler, you played sports. I don't know if you played sports too, Alex. Like you get dudes after school in a locker room for 2 hours daily. And mind you, they've just been around civilization for 8 hours at school. And think of the mayhem that happens when you get
Yeah.
12 dudes in a locker room.
Oh
That's
yeah,
insanity.
it's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
There'd be a lot of
Locker
like
room.
there'd be a lot of butthole talk in that town. There'd be a lot of like butthole talk
It's
based
it gets-
industry in the town.
it gets violent or it gets homoerotic. You get more than 6 dudes isolated and that's what it is.
Odds
I
are
guess
both.
I guess that was my next kind of like question. Like, so, and I'm talking mostly about these towns in Pennsylvania that I drive around and I see, like, and you stop there and you're like, it's like, there's like 3,000 people. Like a town of 3,000 people is way more confusing to me than a town of 50 people or 5 million. Like 3,000 is like it's enough to have like almost all the things needed. Like you have to have cops still. You have to have, a school. You have to have like some type of like healthcare.
That's not entirely true.
What do you mean?
know, I mean, well, there's plenty of towns that are like so small that the municipality is its own thing, but
Yeah.
for literally everything, they have to go to the town next door. Or
True.
The towns next door.
I guess-
In fact,
all
the
right, I guess
further out
maybe-
you get, that's more likely. I mean, you're talking about Pennsylvania, like that's things are spread out. People, but like when you get it's really really spread out, and like they might have a local doctor, but that's it. They might
Right.
have a guy who works out of their house.
I guess that to me that's even more like that's always funny. Like you'll go to a place and it's like the economy here it's like in a bubble. Like people are just exchanging their own money with each other. You know what I mean? Like I'm a landscaper. I get paid to do landscaping by the pizza guy. And then on lunch, I'll go to the pizza shop for pizza. So I give some of my money back to him. And then I'll cut my finger off on a chainsaw. I'll have to go to the doctor who's also in the town. And everybody's just kind of handing their own money back to the people who gave it to them.
Yeah, it's all tested positive for coke.
But I guess that's essentially what an economy is, like on a big ass scale. Like, yeah, just
Sort of.
we're all kind of like just fucking. We
Church,
have money.
yeah, religion.
Religion.
You guys took
Right.
religion's a big one.
No,
That'll
that's
put you in
no.
all kinds of like you'll stay for that, and like the communities will be based around that.
And it's
Do you think
like
there's
even immigrating
So-
in general, like a lot of towns are, especially. I mean, you're talking about Pennsylvania, German, Dutch, these people just move to whatever's comfortable. Hey, I hear the streets are paved with gold in Bethlehem.
Right.
As
Or
long as
even
you're
like
German.
I know like and Randy, like, is there a place in the United States, like you're from Antigua? Is there a place that there's like a lot of people that kind of just will go there?
Brooklyn. That's where I went to. Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Flatbush, Brooklyn.
There you go.
So
But I guess
so
that's what happens too.
So much so that my dad, the lady, his girlfriend of the last several years, like when they go back to Antigua, so they met in New York City, right? I don't know if they knew each other previously. Anyway, her family lives 2 houses down from my grandmother, and they found each other in New York City. That's how small that community, like within,
shit.
you know,
Yeah.
like so, like a lot of immigrant groups. That's how my family got to the Lehigh Valley. Was one of my cousins ended up here working for somebody, and then it wasn't like nobody ever said Allentown streets were paved with gold. That phrase has never been uttered
I was just kidding.
ever. But it was just, you know, familiarity. Like familiarity is such an important part of decision making. Just because if you take it at a very base level, you just go, hey, somebody I know went there and they're living. That's all you know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're living. And you go, okay, so, you know, you start checking it off. No one's tried to kill you. You haven't tried to kill anybody. Somehow you're getting food. All right. You know, and you go, that's enough. I can try that.
Right.
And where it is doesn't even matter. I was talking to my,
once you're like actually moving somewhere, yeah, like if you're moving across, you know, the world, even like just out of New York City, comparing to New York, anything to New York, it's like, well, we're gonna probably have more space, you know, like everything's gonna feel a little more generic, and in a positive way, where it's not, it's just you could be in Allentown, you could be in Cleveland, you could be in the suburbs of, you know, Wichita, whatever. It'll feel different no matter what.
Yeah.
It'll feel probably more open and.
Those small communities too. Like, so now, like, okay, you take the immigrant thing, right? And this is, I know it's true for this area, and I know it's true for when we lived in Brooklyn too. So if you get, let's say we all move to, we'll pick Allentown, right? If a significant portion of Antiguans move to Allentown, you know what that means then? We get to share the same food, because now we have the buying power that necessitates that thing gets imported there. And then you pop that out to wherever you go. That's why you end up with like the Swedish in Minnesota, and you're eating that gefilte fish or whatever the heck they eat. That was it called, that stuff that they cure in lime. I saw
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But all these little subcultures, and so that when you consolidate, now you get to recreate as much as you know from home. That's a benefit of it, right?
Yeah.
And then
these neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if English isn't your first language, now you don't have that immediate barrier.
Yeah.
Right.
Huge.
And then almost that starts to grow exponentially, because now it's like, oh, now I can. It's almost like a new city gets born inside the city, because like you're like, oh, I can open up a shop now because there are enough people here that will buy the thing that I can offer. Probably 10 years ago, when it was just me and Randy, I probably couldn't have this shop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but now there's like a whole economy built within this new group.
You start importing the olive oil, and you know, Vito Corleone popping off right there.
Randy, what's something, if you go into a new area or a new town or a new city, or not new, or just wherever, because you travel for work, what's something, if you see it, you'll be like, oh, there's people from Antigua here.
Oh boy, that'd be hard.
Or what's something that you'll see that you're like,
Caribbean. I'll go Caribbean would be broader. Antigua's
okay,
small. Perfect. I would have to see a flag. You're talking about 100,000 people. Like,
right. Okay, let's go Caribbean.
Yeah, Caribbean. It's like, it starts with supermarkets. That's probably why I mentioned food. Right? It's not just the restaurant. Restaurant will be one thing. Okay, this is a Jamaican restaurant almost everywhere, right? But the second you walk into a bodega and you see like Milo or Ovaltine, this is hot chocolate, stuff like that, you're like, oh, okay, we're here. There's a cocoa bread. Somebody's selling that. You're like, oh, okay. And without talking to anybody, if you just walk in and you look at the shelf, you see certain products and you're like, okay, all right, it's that.
Yeah.
That's the easiest thing that I could think of. Might
That's
be on
honestly
the
that's one of the hardest parts of being Pennsylvania Dutch, because there's not anything that I don't even know if I am that, but like there doesn't seem to be anything that anybody looks forward to seeing. Like
Pierogies.
Pennsylvania Dutch, like German, like my culture, it's not that, you know.
Pierogies, and
I guess
they're
I don't. I'm not.
delicious,
I don't
man.
like pierogies, man.
You should
What?
move. You
Yeah,
should
I don't like
move.
pierogies.
Yeah, get out of there.
I if I'll have a
Antigo.
pierogi, it's got to be like a fried one that's like hard. I don't like the soggy ones. Those like soggy ones gross me out. They taste like an animal from the sea. It just reminds me of an animal from the sea. I can't. I don't know why. It just does, and I don't like it. And I like seafood. I just don't like something that I don't. It looks like an unrecognizable animal from the sea, and
It's just a potato.
it's the
Yeah.
consistency and look of it.
Are you
That
looking
gets
at a
me.
French fry, being like, "This is a fish stick"? Get this out
No,
of my
no,
face.
French fry. Well, there's also I can't have a soggy French fry. Soggy French fry will drive
It
me
sounds
nuts.
like a texture thing.
Yeah, it's a texture thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I got it.
yeah.
Yes. I'm trying. So for our area, what would it be? I don't know. There's like besides like local chains or something like
I mean,
that.
if you saw Scrapple on a shelf,
Yeah,
Scrabble,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
wherever, anywhere.
It's so funny
Anywhere
when I
outside
was
of
in
maybe Maryland.
when I was in like 5th grade elementary school. Like I'm from a pretty white ass town, right? And we did culture day, like where everybody brings a dish from their culture, and it was just sausages, dude. Everybody brought a different type of sausage,
That's
or
cool.
like fucking they had just like
how old were you?
5th grade, whatever age that is. I
Too
think I
young-
was like
too young to
I
sneak
think
it.
I was like 19.
Too young. Nobody was thinking of beer, right?
No, I did not. Nobody other than the teacher.
Nobody was
What-
like, "This is a sausage fest." Yeah, dicks everywhere.
Damn it! It was though. It was an
I'm
actual.
sure you were
sausage.
that. You were 10 years old. I'm sure
Yeah.
everybody was like, "This." Was
You
a
wanted
big
that.
mistake.
At 10, you're like, give me a sausage fest, please. I don't want any girls here. I want all dudes forever. Yeah. So, Rennie, what's something that like, what's your favorite food from your like
home?
Caribbean? Like, does Antigua do anything different than like the rest of the Caribbean?
So all the Caribbean islands to me. Like I haven't been to all of them, but familiar enough, right? I haven't been to all of them. But I went to Puerto Rico for work, so I was able to be there for like a week or so. I think twice. Anyway, we all eat the same things. Like everybody just cooks it slightly different. So it's like it's saltfish. You're eating a bunch of cassava. You're eating green bananas and plantains and rice and fish and a ton of fish. And everybody takes like those. You take those stock things and just remix them for everybody. Every island does it a little bit differently, and they add this or they add that, or they might have this local vegetable that's different. But it's like that for us. It's the seafood. Saltfish is a big one. In the Caribbean, you go saltfish. Yeah, that's like that's just stock and trade. You eat that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and be happy about it. And be happy.
Do you remember any of like when you guys were like immigrating here? Like, do you remember any of those conversations? Like, why you're going, or like what? Like,
Oh,
hey,
well.
we're gonna go to Brooklyn, or because this?
No.
reason?
I came. My parents were here first.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Do they
So
ever
I didn't
talk
come with
about?
them.
Do they ever talk about like the decision making process of it?
I've only found out. I swear, in the last 2 years, I found out how my parents got here. They don't talk about that. At least in my family, they did not talk about it. Like,
Were they on the
I said,
run? Was it a on the run
I'm
situation?
obsessed with everybody being on the run.
I am.
yeah, definitely could have been. Definitely could have
Yeah.
been, but it just didn't talk about it. Like I think it's one of those things. I've thought about it. So like as insular as I said, like the community is like if you go to Brooklyn, you'll run into Antiguans all over the place. Like there's people from the village there, and this person and that person, and you'll find them wherever boroughs they're in, right? But a lot of it that now you have an accent, and my parents have an accent because they came here. Much deeper one was they came here as adults. I came as a child, so it's a completely different thing. I didn't grow up. I have vivid memories. If you left Nazareth in the 5th grade, you would have a pretty clear understanding of what life was in Nazareth, but it's a whole lot different than leaving as an 18, 19, or 20-year-old
Yeah.
who's already made a baby. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
so it's like it's different. And the point I was trying to make too, they spoke English. English was their first language, so they didn't necessitate being as insular.
Right.
They weren't forced to. And then you're also in the biggest city in the world. Like, I think that warps a lot of it. Like, you coming from, shoot, you were talking about like being bused. Like, I remember I took the, I was in Antigua, I took the bus to school, but I was like the only kid in that particular school because my family just happened to live 2 miles away. And so I had to take the bus. And that wasn't like a school bus. I just got on the bus, got over there. But you didn't, it was, yeah, the languages I think is a big factor. And it
Yeah,
was
that
just
was
easier
something
to kind of,
that
so you go
that-
from a community, my point was you go from a community that small to New York City. And I think if I had to guess, I never asked my parents, but if I had to guess, processing that and trying to survive as an adult, I think that takes up enough of your time. You don't need to explain to me what the hell's going on.
yeah, true.
Yeah.
It's like
You're still trying to figure
I
it
think
out.
you got your like, exactly. You go from a village of a couple of hundred people to New York City in the early 70s and 80s, Times Square, full nude, all that business.
Wait, full
In a
nude? What?
day? Like the sex booths, like New York City when it was crazy, when it was
Yeah.
wild. Not the New York City of today. The New
Yeah.
York cities of the early 80s and early mid 70s. That New York City. You get dropped in there from some little island, you got your hands full. I think there's no explaining anything to anybody, man.
I think
At
what
least
Randy's
that's the
trying
way
to
I
say
can make
is we got to
sense of
make
it.
America great again. Is what he's saying somehow.
Just
I
run-
hear that.
Move
Which
the
I don't
porn
love.
theaters back to
How the hell-
7th Avenue. That's it. That's all.
I guess
Get
to be
some
honest, like
handfuls of tips.
That's the
you know?
one story. That's the one
Have your
story I
hands
got
full.
from my dad. He remembers his first impression of 42nd Street.
oh no,
I bet.
So, sorry. I just want to get this out before I forget. This is how stark it was. This is my dad. He did tell me this, right? So he shows up in New York City. He doesn't have an address for the person he's going to meet.
Wow.
Doesn't have an address. He's at like it's Kennedy or whatever airport, LaGuardia, whatever airport was there. So he lands there, and he has to get up to Harlem. I think he was meeting somebody uptown. I'm pretty sure he said he was going uptown. He doesn't know the address he's trying to get to, and he's by himself.
but he doesn't speak the language. He did speak
No,
English.
he speaks
though, right?
English. Yeah, he speaks
Yeah, but
English. Yeah.
That's insane.
Getting
You
around
couldn't
New
do
York
that now.
City. Yeah.
No
You don't
cell
know
phone.
the subway. Yeah.
Don't know nothing. Literally, he was in the village 24 hours ago or less. Shoot, it's only a 4-hour flight. He was coming from an island of a couple thousand, less than 500,000, much less than 500,000 people, right?
So how do you do it?
Got in a cab somehow, and like he had a general idea. Like there's like 130th Street or something. Like, he had a ballpark.
You just said a
But he
neighborhood.
didn't
I'm
have
going
to
to
take
Harlem.
me to. Yeah, he didn't have to take me to this specific address. And somehow he figured it out.
What's
Like,
insane about that is like
nuts.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that now. But it's almost like it would scare me more now because of all the resources I have. If you were stripped of all the resources of like cell phones and like GPS, maybe it wouldn't be as daunting because you're like, yeah, I don't know, I'll figure it out.
I
Like-
think some of it.
Walking around.
Yeah,
Some-
walk around.
Yeah, some of it too. Like people would more understand why you're asking.
Yeah, exactly.
They had because that's what they would have to do. Like people,
Yeah.
they probably relied on each other a little bit more. I'm guessing, right? That if you get the cab driver, if you're a cab driver, and at that point you see some West Indian at freaking Kennedy Airport, that's probably not your first rodeo seeing that month, right? Or an immigrant,
true.
period. So you kind of go, okay, this guy doesn't know. He's got the money. I'll get him up there, and then you figure it out.
I didn't think of the immigrant. I didn't think of that aspect of when building towns, like
Mhm.
where you have like a community of people, and then they find like people like them, and then they go there. That's one detail that I overlooked.
It's a huge aspect of American towns.
Yeah,
For
that's
sure. I mean,
that's what I was about to ask you. Like, okay, so what about like in another country where it's not such a melting pot? Like they have to probably like. Have you, Alex? You've been like in Europe, right?
I haven't. No,
You haven't.
I've never been to
I've only
Europe.
been once. I remember the like the demographics being different, like towns being different, like not as many big cities, more village type stuff, and that's probably maybe why. Because there's not so much of a melting pot where you like immigrate like to Ireland.
They're only experiencing that for the first time, like now, and they're not having a great time with it. But yeah, if you think about just the Europe in the news and stuff, they have a lot of issues with immigration. I wouldn't say like immigration is actually the issue for them, but they seem to have a lot of problems with a lot of Middle Eastern countries are now immigrating to Europe, and like all throughout Europe, and you see a lot of a lot of violence and a lot of anti xenophobic type of attitudes. We're like obviously we have issues with things like that here, but we certainly have been doing that for much longer than they have. Where there was, they didn't really have the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island. It was.
Europe's
What's
problem
that?
is Europe's problem is they forgot that they were the immigrants all over the damn world.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Europe's got a bunch of issues with that.
Yeah, like it's not
So do we.
even like but call it like it is. Like you went. There's a reason that like Algerians are showing up to France. You know why? The French went there. They speak
Right, yeah.
French.
Right, yes. Did great point. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not people. Sometimes I wonder, like, did I just happen to go like is Whitehall High School just the best high school ever? Did I still remember all this shit? Like, I'm serious. Like, did we not all learn this? Like,
I didn't know that. I'm starting to learn now. I've decided to start to learn now. So I just learned that right now.
You can accept history for what it is without, like, shitting on everybody and putting everybody in a guilt trip. Just cop to what it is. This is how it happens. And people got to remember, we're not all that special in this regard either. This is a continuous thing.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
But just people going from one place to the next.
Right.
And then you go, oh, shit, what are you guys doing here? You're going to screw it up. And then you show up over there like, oh, you guys got some good stuff. Let me take it. And then it's not, there's a reason. Recency in the it's a recent memory, recent history. We go back 100, 200 years. That's still fairly recent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But that shit's been happening. Like, don't pretend
migration
like it isn't.
happened constantly, right? Of course, yeah.
Exactly, and it's
of course.
always terrible. It's a terrible process.
Well, in a
Yeah.
way, because in a way, like, kind of going back to like even just building new communities and towns in the United States. That's like migration is happening. It's not like, what I mean? Like, and Randy, like Lehigh Valley, how often do you hear people talk about like New Jersey people or New York people moving in here as like foreigners,
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah,
like,
Yeah.
that's
and
what I'm saying.
there's like this, and that has to happen. That happens probably all over the place where like, and then so like there's like 3 people from New Jersey here for the longest time. But it's like a farm country. Nazareth Town's a perfect example of this.
How much
Small-
that changed in 10 years?
Oh yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
but it changed because like one family came and then they were like, hey, this is a pretty cool place and it's cheap. And then 2 more families came, and then before you know it, there's like a whole ass community of people from that one area, and like and then an offsect of those people are like, let's go, we've ruined like Nazareth, or even not just them, but other people like, this place is too big now, let's go 10 miles that way, there's only 5 people there, and then they start doing it there. I guess that's the explanation I've been looking for this whole time. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
kind of off of what Randy was saying before about, like it's constantly happening and everybody migrates, or has migrated at some point, your ancestors, whatever. Like pretty much no one has been in the same exact place for a long, forever, for hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, surely it happens, but lots of
It's
people
not the
move all
rule.
over the place. It's not the rules. You don't have to do that, and plenty of people don't. There's there's such a thing about thinking of a place as yours, even if it's like, oh, I was born here and I never left. Yeah, but that's not the end of the story. You don't come from a vacuum, and you have to have come from something somewhere.
Right.
You're certainly in the U.S. We're not all Native American. We weren't all here the
Yeah.
entire time for 1,000 years. But it goes all over the world like that. I mean, people like move, and even the ways people got there maybe don't exist as much anymore. Like the Bering Straits, where people aren't like just walking over from Russia into Alaska anymore. But there's people that descend from those people. It's not exclusively. Sometimes it's just about exploring, and people were maybe even more nomadic. There was a time when people didn't just settle down because of agriculture and stick around because they had clean drinking water. They just kept moving for generations.
Because there was like, or even because like, the food, like they kind of followed where the food would be, and even by season, like,
Right.
and then so then when I was thinking about this stuff, sorry, go ahead, Randy.
No, I was just saying. Sometimes it's just like you always think the grass is greener, right?
Right.
Like we're super complicated, but at the same, we're just not, right?
Yeah.
We're just an animal. And I think honestly, when I think about this shit, like genetics, I think just plays so much more of a part in our lives than we think about on an average day. Like
Explain.
like grizzly bears would be here in Pennsylvania if we didn't kill them.
Right.
If you're just take us as an animal. If you go to grizzly and it's eating great in California, and they're banging out little grizzly cubs all over the dang place, and they got to ship them out, right? It's not like they're going to get to Wisconsin and be like, maybe we shouldn't be here. Like, no, it's great here too. Let's go. And then it
Little
just,
cold.
Yeah, but like, okay, so now we move north. All right, let's see whatever happens, the natural selection, all that kind of stuff. If you choose to believe it, I just think, like I said, I think we're just certain. There are certain people that are hard coded for that. And you need that as like, if you look at biologically as a species, you need a subsection of that within your genetic code, or you would have never made it.
Yeah, because
It's
you can't
hard.
just
It's
stay
hard.
somewhere.
It's
Yeah.
hardwired. Hardwired.
Yeah.
There has to be a section that says, "Go find the next thing," because as great as it is here, you can't assume that this thing is going to stay solid all the time, and these factors are never going to change. Your
Yeah.
So
adaptability.
did we lose that? Did we lose that?
Who's to say we lost it? People still
Are we
move.
evolving out of that thing?
I don't know about that.
Not my opinion.
I think we find our ways, cities and towns and stuff are ways to like expand the pack so we don't like outgrow our pack entirely. Because otherwise you would just, have to move on. You can't just have, without a lot of the trappings of modern society, we at 10,000, 300,000 people, a little tribe can't survive like that. A pack of wolves can't survive like that. But if you start making agriculture and building around it, then you find ways for the pack to be bigger. But eventually that pack is so big or can't actually provide for itself, and so it's too big. There's a tipping point, and people go off and start a new pack. They start a new village.
Here's the thing, too, Tyler, to think about, right? Smaller communities are more cohesive.
Sure, yeah. It's easier
Right?
easier to link up less people.
You support each other.
Okay,
more.
so then
that's some of why people, I think those things stay and why they're still there.
so there are people that prefer cities and there are people that prefer being in a small town, right? Like the separation between those two types of people, like, seems to be there seems to be a vast separation between those types of people and their own desires, right? Like,
I mean, none of this is forever. Like, you don't move to New York City or L.A. or wherever and go, I'm definitely going to live here for the rest of my life, and I made this decision immediately. Same thing with any suburb or Allentown or wherever. You don't have to be there for the entire. You don't just move and decide this is it and I'm done and I never move away. People migrate all the time in their own lives. They change it up. They'll go spend 10 years here, 20 years there, 5 years there, the rest of their life somewhere else.
And even within those big cities, you got to think how many smaller communities are in there that they don't move. There's people, I was knowing people, there's people that live in the Bronx that have never been to Brooklyn, and they've been in the Bronx their whole life. That's insanity.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
That's insanity.
What is so this whole idea? This I started to get kind of interested about this shit. It's twofold, being on the road and seeing these towns, and then also I was working on a joke about it, about how I'm in small towns and I don't get it. So in all of that, I'm trying to talk to the right person, find out the expert who would lead me to the path of the most info. Is this a sociological thing? Is this is the way towns get made in America should I talk to an anthropologist? Am I talking to a historian? Am I talking to a sociologist? Who would give me the best insight? Because it seems after talking to you guys for 45 minutes, it's a human thing. It's very much a human thing.
It depends who you want to, what type of information you want to get out of them. Do you want hands-on experience in the modern day? Do you want somebody to specifically talk about ancient civilizations? These are different subjects.
Well, do you think there's something that is the same about it all? The way ancient civilizations were made, the way New York City was made, the way people are very much moving to Emmaus right now? Do you think there's anything that's common amongst Emmaus is booming. It's booming.
Why?
Why is that's the whole fucking reason I'm right here?
Towns like Emmaus sometimes boom specifically because people want to be within the striking distance of certain, Allentown, but they don't want to live in Allentown.
Yep.
You could make an argument about certain towns outside of Detroit thrive. You could say the same thing about Philadelphia suburbs. There are certain suburbs that thrive because people didn't want to live in Philadelphia at a time. There was certainly Northeast or West Philly or something like that. Those suburbs that are just outside of those.
And there's certain.
And then it comes back around. Just like we were saying before, it's all cyclical.
Yeah. And then there's certain neighborhoods like Delco that desperately wanted to live in Philadelphia, but Philadelphia was like, "You're not allowed to be in Philadelphia."
Wow.
Shots fired at Delco.
Shots at Delco. Yikes.
That's part of it.
They genuinely do that, though. They do, redline people and all sorts of things where they're like, we're going to make it as impossible as possible.
You got that too.
To get in here.
Yeah, you got that too now. You got hey, sometimes you're there because you ain't welcome nowhere else.
Yep. Totally. And then that gets taken over. You mentioned St. Louis earlier. I was just in St. Louis, staying in some suburb of St. Louis. And there was a whole plaque that was we recognize that we kicked all the black people out, and this was a total black town and isn't at all anymore. And it was oh, yeah, well, thanks for the lip service. It was.
They put up a plaque?
There was a plaque, and it was written in a way that it was this was written in the 70s or the 80s. This was it was worded strange. It was very unapologetic. But
you could tell somebody was somebody was fine, we'll do a plaque. Fine.
Right.
Yeah, that's I'm not even a coupon, not 10%.
A house,
not a rent voucher, hey, move back 6 months rent on us. Try out St. Louis.
Yeah, it was you got to move downtown.
New city motto.
Dude, it's funny that every little joke we've said is an actual example of a place doing that actual thing. The rent voucher, didn't Jersey City do the rent voucher? Or a tax break? I think they did a tax break.
Maybe. I can see that.
And that's that's a whole different reason why people move, tax incentive.
Yeah. Absolutely, people do that. Cheap housing,
And obviously states states adjust their tax law to entice people to move to their state. Yeah.
And entire industries and stuff. Have you ever read the Death and Life of Great American Cities?
No.
That's a book I think you would be interested in that talks a lot about this sort of stuff. I mean, it's very like required reading, like for class, like it's classroom reading. And it's
Dude, I read the
like,
children's almanac. I read the almanac. I'm fine reading some statistic. That's
I'm
fine.
looking it up now. It's from '61, but it very much talks about like community and what makes these great American cities. I mean, it's called The Death and Life of Great American Cities, so it's about why they fail also. But it's it's an interesting read. If
Well,
you're
that has a lot to
interested
do.
in the
That's
subject.
also something that interests me. Is like a town that fails, it's not like a town that runs out of all the people. To me, is insane.
Well, here's the thing. You go back to a question that you asked about, like, if you go to one of these towns, how do you know? Who would you ask? Like, hey, how is this? Like, what's going on here? Why are people here? This is what how I think about that. Like, the question you should ask is not like who, right? It'll lead you to who, but I think if you got to think of it in terms of find the castle in that region, in that town. It's
Okay,
always a castle.
describe
The
that.
castle-
Describe what you mean by that.
The castle can be an industry. So you got the Pennsylvania coal towns. That's an industry. There's the castle. So that's going to pop up to support that. The castle could be a church, where the Amish, for example. Hey, we're here. We can do our religion. That's the castle, right? The castle can be, it's great farmland, and there's the biggest farm in the area. If you find that entity, they'll tell you why they're there. And when the castle falls, it disperses.
I guess that's what blows my mind about Bethlehem is like the castle went down and the city itself started.
Shoot, I'm looking for all these dang examples, and it's right freaking looking at us over there. A big steel.
But explain the castle crumbled and the city kind of thrived and like grew.
Well, there's other industries that popped up by then.
Exactly. That's what happens. They like figure out a way. I mean, somebody's thinking about these things where they realize, oh, Bethlehem Steel is going down. What do we have? What can we do to entice people to stay or move in? And a lot of times they do have other industries. I mean, most cities at this point, it's the modern era. They're the industries that are always like the biggest industry in any city or town or county are always like healthcare, education. And so if a lot of people, Starbucks, I mean, some places it is stuff like Starbucks in retail, but it's usually more like tourism is the industry or something like that, or they're not exclusively running on coffee. But even
Alex, but you said as Bethlehem Steel is failing, there's somebody being like, who's that person?
I mean the mayor, it's the city
council,
planner,
urban planner.
Probably not the planner. I think urban planner, maybe the city planner. Usually, I think is, I mean, they'll do stuff, but there's not much I think they can do to entice people to move in. They can just make, whatever infrastructure they're losing or zoning. They can do stuff like that. That'll maybe help, but I think a lot of that stuff comes from the top down. It's probably a lot of like the council is enticing an industry, whatever they can do through the municipality to entice people.
Or the state, like you get grants, and like you can the state like we want build a water park or a casino, and then
and sometimes you just get lucky. Like you then not even lucky, or you change your focus, and something comes along that allows you to capitalize on something else. So we take like Bethlehem, right? We take the Valley Bethlehem. Bethlehem's still a big old deal, right? Well, in order to have that big ass factory at one point, you needed the land to put it on, right? That was a major plus. You weren't dropping that thing in the middle of Pittsburgh or some other place. So, okay, so that's gone. But guess what? You still had at that point a whole ton of land. What do you put on all that land? Warehouses. That's kind of it's not a singular castle anymore. But how many warehouses are in this? I work in warehousing. And now,
you're part of the. Well, some would say you're part of the problem, but nobody on this podcast. But there are people out there saying that.
100%. I've been taking American jobs since I've been 16 years old.
You are the American job, a warehouse guy that just.
gainfully employed since like anyway. But then so you take that right, and then I know this because I work where I was at. Then you capitalize on your space, right? And then but that also ties in geographically of where we are. You got the whole freaking Eastern Corridor up and down,
Right.
so you can move all these trucks in and out. And then now here comes all the people in.
One thing about the Lehigh
At least
Valley
for
I've
our
always
area.
heard. Right, exactly. And that's like I used to always tell people like just doing shows up there, be like, it's the fastest growing metro area in Pennsylvania, and you go there, you can sense there's something about that. It's like one massive metropolitan area that's a suburb of, like you said, New York, New Jersey, Philly. It's got everything, and you can be in upstate New York, quote unquote, like relatively easy, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And they always talked about building some sort of commuter rail line, some sort of rail line that would connect the Metro North, NJ Transit, and SEPTA. And now you have all this access, not only around the Lehigh Valley, because let's say even if that was 4 stops around the Lehigh Valley, but connected to all 3 of those train systems, I mean, you'd
Huge.
be there.
It'd be insane.
Is there an Amtrak station in Bethlehem?
Not
in the
yet.
area? There
They
isn't
approved
even.
it. They approved it. Yeah, but it's
They
been
approved it.
That's
Huge.
but it was
Amtrak
like
even.
10 years ago. Because there's
Right,
all
I
these like
remember hearing a lot
dormant.
about this
Yeah,
stuff,
there's like
yeah.
dormant
Rail
Norfolk,
lines.
like the Norfolk lines, like
Yeah.
there's like a rail system that would be perfect for it, but
The
I
trucks
don't know
are there.
there's like every year or every 2 years there's like an article in the local news
Right.
that's like we're doing it, and then
Yeah.
something happens, like it's too
I don't like
expensive.
trains, man. This country don't like trains.
They don't.
Trains are having a rough time lately.
People
They're
also-
up lately. It's
It's
It's been
lately.
tough to be a train lately. There's a lot of crashes in these trains lately.
They fall off the rack.
They do at an alarming
Yeah.
rate.
And there's not that many of them,
yeah.
so it's a high percentage.
We're not building any new ones, I guess. Yeah, I think like part of the issue with some of that not happening, not only is it expensive, of course, but they get a lot of pushback. I think even like local businesses and stuff, local industries, they get worried that, oh, if we build a train line, they're able to leave. They can leave now.
Yeah.
Or they don't have to work in the area. They can commute, in a different way than if they were driving. It prevents them from leaving if you can't leave like that. And so you get all this pushback, and sometimes that'll happen, and then people, if you prevent it for so long, then people just move away. If you didn't want the interstate to drive through your town, eventually people are going to be like, oh, well, then I can't get to where I'm trying to go. I'm going to move to that place.
So you're saying it's the pushback and
It's short-term.
it's shorts. And you think it is negative, short-sighted. You think it's not.
I think
smart.
that's how some cities that are thriving fall down the wayside, and why you get a lot of cities where a lot of states have like one big city that's like thriving, and then they have a bunch of others that are not in their heyday.
Like
And-
Indiana.
Yeah, as a whole, the whole city of Indiana.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, Indianapolis, and then you have Muncie, and you have, all the. I mean, a lot of cities are like these days. Again, like things go back to education. Some things are just built around a college, and like
Right.
everything in that city is pretty much that school. But a lot of places I think are, I grew up in Massachusetts, and like Worcester is still a big city, but it's a big college town. It's got a lot of colleges, and it's very religious. It's like much more religious than Boston, but they were a big, working class city, and then a lot of that stuff just moved to Boston. And they were worried that everyone was going to move to Boston if they built the highway there, and they could work in Boston, and then they all just ended up moving to Boston, and Boston kind of grew, and Worcester still looks like the 50s. It like doesn't look like, and it's weird. And then they, of course, because it's a city, a highway does go through it. They have an interstate, but it isn't 95. It's one that's much less utilized, and
Yeah.
so it still rips up the entire town. Because a lot of that stuff did that anyway. I mean, when you want to build an interstate or a rail line or something's getting ripped up.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna end up going through in a whole neighborhood that you're gonna destroy eminent domain, style.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn it! So we're there. We made it to the end of the show. and I got to be honest with you guys. I do feel like I know more. There are things I didn't think about,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
yeah, this did make me feel better about why I'm in a city or a town, and I'm like, what the fuck are these people doing right here? And it's like you guys laid it out for me pretty good. I got to tell you. I got to tell
Oh,
you.
great. Glad to hear it, Tyler.
Do you want to? I mean, I don't know if anybody has watched this. We'll find out. I don't know why I went live because I didn't even interact with
I didn't
anybody.
even
That was.
realize.
I was about to say, is this like live?
I
It
didn't know you
is
were doing
live,
that.
but
Live.
I can't. I didn't.
I was so.
I don't. I
scared
don't
you
know
were
how to
gonna
hook it up where people can like
You could talk
comment
to people.
and I could be like, "Hey, I used to know how to do that, but
Well,
I don't."
add this to your list, Tyler. A lack of know-how is why.
yeah.
Because right now
Yes.
I feel like I'm trapped in your little podcast town here, and I got to spread my wings.
Yeah, invent
You
your
know?
own. Invent your own. That's
like
how
a- yeah,
things
it's
get
like-
made. That's how things.
It's like how. It's like Kyle's just saying, it's a whole big internet out there.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm married to this podcast, and I can't look at the rest of the internet.
Find like-minded people and do that with them. You know?
Right.
That's
Let's
too.
try that
Yeah,
other
that's
thing.
too interesting.
Yeah, so give some work. If people do stumble upon this little town of ours, how would they find you?
Who, me?
I know they would find you like
Yeah.
just.
You know, Alex. That's an Alex question. My bad.
All right. I don't know. I'm Alex Grubard on everything. That's how it is. GRUBARD. You know, go to my website. Follow me on Instagram. That sort of stuff.
Yeah, go check Alex out. He's got a ton of cool stuff coming. Weeding Out the Stone. Are you going on the road with that coming up?
I've got a couple. I'm doing in November. I'll be at Empire Comedy Club doing stand up and also Weeding Out the Stone. I mean, this is live right now. I'll be in Austin next weekend at Cap City Comedy Club. I'll be at
Hell yeah.
Dry Heat Comedy Club the weekend after in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But if you want to see where I'm at, alexgrubard.com. Follow me on Instagram. I'll post about these places. And yeah, Weeding's coming to Connecticut in November also. So, you know, weedingoutthestone.com if you want to check that out.
Perfect. And Randy's gonna be doing stand up
that
pretty
going
soon.
on.
You're gonna be doing stand up
Hell
again
yeah.
pretty soon. So
Yeah.
listen, guys.
Thanks for having me. This was fun, man.
This
Appreciate
was
it.
fun. I feel enlightened, and I hope to find something else that I don't understand and bring you back, and you can teach me once again.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, guys.